The siren cut the silence like a knife. Red lights flashed down range B as officers ran past steel doors. Inside one small cell, a man lay flat on the concrete, motionless, his plastic meal tray tipped, peas rolling in slow circles. A medic shouted, "No pulse," and the corridor filled with short, sharp orders, "AED, now. Clear the range." In the most secure prison in America, where life is planned down to the minute, death had arrived without warning. A camera above the door blinked green. A needle of sunlight from the narrow window touched the man's wrist, the one with the pale scar from years ago. His chest didn't rise. 2 officers stood ready with the shield. A third knelt and pressed the pads to his skin. Charging. The air felt cold and empty. They shocked him. Once. Twice. His body jerked. Then, nothing. The medic looked up. Again. The siren kept howling, and every door on the range stayed locked, every eye behind the slots watching, waiting, wondering, in a place built to control every breath. What happens when the breath simply stops? Earlier that week, the morning began the same way it always does at ADX Florence, before the sun, before the birds, before anything soft or warm. Lights flicked on. The thin mattress creaked. Doors stayed shut. In each cell, a person woke up to the same 4 steps: stand, stretch, count the cracks in the paint. Breakfast slid through the slot: a carton of milk, a hard-boiled egg, a square of bread. A voice on the speaker said the count would begin. The voice was calm. It was always calm. That calm voice made the place feel even more still, more controlled. The walls did not answer back. People think ADX is all action and danger. They imagine fights, riots, shouting. They imagine secret tunnels and high-tech tricks. That's the myth. The truth is much quieter. Most days here are made of small sounds: the hum of the fluorescent light, the scuff of shoes across smooth floors, the metal click when cuffs close around wrists, the soft slide of paper as someone pushes a letter back under the door because they are not allowed to keep staples. The biggest sound of all is the one you can't hear: silence that sits on your chest like a heavy coat. Our man, let's call him Michael, lived by the clock. Not because he loved time, but because time was the only thing he could hold. He kept a folded paper on his shelf with his schedule written in pencil. Wake. Count. Breakfast. Legal mail check. Exercise if approved. Shower, 3 times a week, in cuffs. Lunch. Security check. Medical pass sometimes. Dinner. Night count. Lights out. He didn't have a watch, but he learned the light in the sky. He knew the sun crossed his narrow window at the same angle at 10 a.m. He knew the shadow line at 2 p.m. touched the corner of the sink. He knew the guards who worked mornings by their walk. One had a limp. One whistled under his breath, but never a tune, only one rising note. Isolation was the rule. Most days, Michael did not speak to anyone face to face. If he got recreation, it was alone in a small concrete yard sometimes called a dog run, open to the sky but walled on all sides. He could see a slice of blue and one white cloud if the wind was kind. He did push-ups. He did sit-ups. He said the alphabet out loud because hearing his own voice told him he was still here. If he was lucky, a book would arrive on the cart, a history book, an old novel, or a dictionary. He would read the dictionary and circle words in his head, since he had no pen that day. He would spell the words with crumbs on the floor so he wouldn't forget. People outside say ADX is where inmates wait to be executed. That's another myth. The federal death row is not here. ADX is where control is the main thing, where some of the most dangerous or escape-prone people are kept under strict rules. Life here can mean a long, quiet road of years. The rules are tight. Mail is read and delayed. Phone calls are rare and monitored. TV, if you earn it, shows a few approved channels behind a clear shield. Everything you touch is counted, logged, and locked. The day is a long hallway with many doors, and every door needs a key. Still, even in this place, life finds a way to move. Michael's mother wrote to him twice a month. Her letters smelled like laundry soap and hope. She told him about the peach tree in her yard and how it finally gave fruit again after 3 summers of nothing. She sent drawings from his niece, a son with a smile, a house with smoke rising in curls, a stick figure with big hands because Uncle Mike has strong hands. Michael would smile at that. He had not held anything but plastic and steel for years, but in that moment, he held his niece's drawing in his mind like it was made of glass. On a Tuesday, a legal packet arrived for Michael. The officer set it on the floor, told him to back up, then slid it through the slot. Michael opened it and ran his finger over the lines. He didn't read fast anymore, his mind sometimes stuck to thoughts like gum on a shoe, but he read slowly and carefully. The words were not a promise, not even a plan, but they were something to do. Something to push the day forward. He breathed in and out. He wrote a response on lined paper, each letter neat and square. He stared at the page before sliding it back through the slot. He whispered, "Please get there." The page didn't answer. Nothing in here answered except the intercom. That afternoon, rec was cancelled on the whole range. No reso. N given. That happened sometimes. Someone might have broken a rule. Someone might have refused a search. One small thing could stop all the rest. Michael stood and paced the length of his cell, 6 steps forward, touched the wall, 6 steps back, touched the bed. He counted his breaths. He counted the tiny holes in the air vent. He tried to remember a song from childhood, but only the first line came, so he repeated it until it felt like a friend. Night brought its own kind of weight. The quiet was thicker. You could hear the building breathe, a fan deep in the walls, water moving somewhere you couldn't see, a soft click as a camera turned. Michael lay down and stared at the ceiling. He pictured the sky over the mountains outside the fences. He saw it in black and white like an old film. He wished for color. He wished for a memory that didn't hurt. He closed his eyes and saw the peach tree again. He decided to draw it in the morning with his breakfast crumbs. The next day, he woke with a tightness in his chest. Not panic. Not anger. Just a hard, round pressure like someone had placed a stone under his sternum. He thought it was hunger. He ate the egg. The pressure stayed. The count came and went. He did push-ups. The pressure stayed. He drank water. It stayed. He sat on the floor and leaned against the bed frame and waited. Waiting was the only skill this place truly taught. Sometimes, it taught you too well. On Friday, the warden's voice came over the speaker with a tone no one had heard in months. It was firm, urgent, and it carried an edge that cut through the calm. All units, prepare for movement on range B, clear corridors. Stand by. Movement meant transfer. Movement meant an escort team, shields, restraints, pepper spray canisters clipped to belts. Inmates stayed locked in. Staff lined up in pairs. Somewhere, keys rattled like dry bones in a paper cup. Michael stood at his door and looked through the narrow window. He saw boots, black and polished. He saw a face shield. He saw a hand at a radio. The pressure in his chest grew into a wave. He took a breath and another. He pressed one palm to the steel, feeling the cold come through to his skin. The team moved to the cell 2 doors down. Inmate, remove all items from the food slot. Comply with cuffing. The voice was loud, set to be heard over fear. Silence answered. Inmate, comply. Another silence. Then a sound like a chair tipping. The team shifted their weight. The leader nodded. The shield moved forward. A second siren started up, sharper, closer. Medical to range B, the radio crackled. Michael's breath shortened. The wave in his chest rose and broke into sharp little pieces. He tried to call out for help, but the sound came out thin and torn. He pressed the call button. Medical, he tried again, then slid to the floor as the edges of his vision went gray. He could hear the officers shouting down the range, boots thudding, keys snapping, the thunk of a battering tool on steel. He could not feel his hands, the corridor filled with people moving fast. "Open," someone shouted. "On me." The heavy door to the other cell boomed as the team made entry. At the same time, a medic turned toward Michael's door, eyes cutting to the small window, seeing his shape slide sideways, seeing his lips moving without sound. Two crises at once. Two lives in the balance in a place that tries to keep everything under perfect control. The medic slapped the door with his palm. "This one too. He's going down." Radios burst to life. "We need a second medical kit, now." The siren did not stop. The camera light blinked. Michael's face touched the cool floor, and the last thing he saw was the thread of sunlight on the concrete, thin as a wire, then a click. Then a clang. Then the sound of the lock turning as the door began to open, right as a roar echoed from 2 doors down, a roar that did not sound human at all. The sound that tore down the corridor was not just a shout, it was a scream, wild and raw, bouncing off concrete until it no longer sounded human. Officers froze for half a second, just enough time for chaos to slip in. "Code Blue. Code Blue, Range B." The radio crackled as more boots thundered down the hallway. 2 emergencies in one block, unthinkable in a place built to stop everything before it starts. Inside one cell, Michael lay on the floor, eyes half open. 2 doors down, another man, known as Harris to the officers, Ghost to everyone else, was smashing his head against the wall, over and over, blood streaking the white paint like strokes of red ink. Harris had been at ADX for over 15 years. He'd come from another prison after stabbing an officer in a high-security yard. Here, there was no yard, no crowd, no noise. Only the inside of his head. At first, the silence had made him laugh. He said it was the quiet he'd always wanted. But silence in this place doesn't stay peaceful, it grows sharp edges, cuts into the mind, and turns inward. For weeks, staff had noticed him talking to himself more, whispering to people who weren't there. They'd tried medication, check-ins, observation rounds. But at ADX, help moved slowly, paperwork moved faster, now he was beyond reasoning. The officers with shields lined up at his door, each breath fogging their visors. "Harris, step back," the lead shouted. "This is your last warning." But he didn't stop. He kept slamming his forehead against the wall, mumbling something over and over, "Get them out, get them out." One officer whispered, "Who's he talking to?" Another answered, "No one." Then the command came, "Go." The door flew open. The team surged in, shields first, batons drawn, body cams blinking red. Harris fell back, swinging at the air. The medic dropped to his knees beside Michael's cell door, calling for oxygen and defibrillator pads. The 2 worlds collided, the living and the dying, in a hallway that was supposed to keep both contained. Inside Michael's cell, the medic pressed on his chest. "Stay with me, come on, stay with me." A guard counted compressions. Another guard stood by, whispering into the radio, multiple incidents. 2 subjects down. 1 unresponsive, 1 combative. They were trained to handle violence. They were not trained for heartbreak. Michael's body jolted once more. The monitor beeped faintly, then steadied, a weak, uncertain rhythm. "Got him," the medic said, relief breaking through the strict tone. "He's got a pulse." They lifted him onto a stretcher, strapped his wrists and ankles, and moved fast. Harris, still fighting, was pinned, cuffed, and rolled onto his side. His voice cracked into something like a sob. "They're in the walls," he whispered. "They talk at night." One of the officers shook his head. "Get psyched down here when he's clear." When the range finally emptied, only the echo stayed. The floor smelled like bleach and fear. From behind the other doors, silent eyes watched through narrow windows, some blinking, some unblinking, each trying to guess who had died and who had survived. Hours later, the siren stopped. The block went back to its usual hum. A maintenance worker mopped blood off the wall. A new coat of gray paint would cover it by morning, as if nothing had ever happened. But in ADX, nothing ever really disappears. The cameras remember. The staff remember. The walls remember most of all. Michael woke in the medical wing, strapped to a bed under bright lights. He blinked at the ceiling, confused. His chest ached. Tubes are. And from his arm. A nurse checked the monitor and said softly, "You scared us." He tried to speak, but his throat was dry. "What happened?" The nurse hesitated, then said, "You had a cardiac event. You're lucky they reached you in time." She didn't mention Harris. She didn't mention the scream that still rang in her ears. 3 days passed. Michael stayed in the infirmary, drifting between sleep and wake. Through the small glass window, he saw guards walking in pairs, their radios silent now. Once, he thought he saw Harris being wheeled past, head wrapped, eyes closed, but maybe it was just another man, another story. Here, stories looked the same: gray uniforms, tired faces, no names. When they sent Michael back to his unit, the hallway smelled fresh, paint and disinfectant. His old cell was empty. They moved him to another one. The slot closed with a metallic snap that sounded final, like a book shutting mid-sentence. He lay back and stared at the ceiling, tracing cracks that weren't there before. Maybe they were new, maybe he had just never noticed. Either way, they felt alive. Days blurred again. The routine returned. But something inside him shifted. He started counting his heartbeats instead of the cracks. Every time the lights flicked on, he expected to hear the siren again. Every time the door opened for meals, he thought of Harris's voice. The silence wasn't calm anymore. It was heavy, thick, filled with ghosts that never left. One evening, as the sun slipped low and a beam of light touched the edge of his bed, Michael heard a faint tapping sound. Not random, not noise, rhythmic. Tap. Tap tap. Tap. It came from the wall behind his head. He froze. The code of the lonely. He remembered it from his first year, how inmates spoke through vents and walls using patterns of knocks. He leaned closer. Tap tap, pause, tap. The message spelled one word: alive, Michael's B. Wreath caught. He hesitated, then tapped back, yes. Another pause. Then, slowly, still here. He closed his eyes. For the first time in weeks, he felt something warm move through his chest that wasn't pain. Someone else was there, reaching through walls, breaking the silence even the system couldn't control. He smiled weakly. Maybe it was Harris. Maybe it wasn't. It didn't matter. The sound meant life, but peace doesn't last long at ADX. That night, long after lights out, a new noise rolled down the corridor, different from sirens, different from footsteps. It was a low, steady hum, like power surging through wires. Then a pop. The lights flickered once, twice, and went black. In the dark, the air felt thicker. A voice on the intercom tried to speak, then cut off mid-sentence. Doors stayed locked. The emergency generator should have kicked in. It didn't. For the first time in years, ADX was blind. No cameras, no lights, no eyes watching. From the far end of the range came a single sound. A door hinge moving. Slowly. Deliberately. Someone, or something, had found freedom in the dark.